As 2011 draws to a close, it's always a good time to look back on the year that was. It was a decent year for games, I feel. The PS3 really began to come into its own, the Xbox 360 remains strong, while the Wii seems to have fallen right off the map. The release of the Nintendo 3DS wasn't as strong as Nintendo would have liked, and they're now on the defensive, trying to prop up the shady handheld. What games stood out as great games worthy of praise? Conversely, which games crashed and burned the moment they were released? Hear us give our opinions on these questions on the season finale of Downloadable Content. Happy holidays, everyone. This is Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with me on this final episode of 2011, we have Ben.
How you doing, everybody?
Joshy.
Hello.
And my gamer in residence, Ron.
Hello, everyone.
We just can't get rid of him.
He almost sounds like Droopy Dog. I just want him to come out and say, "Hello, are you happy, people?"
Well, to be fair, Brian, he's only allowed out when these times when you let him out of the closet to record these episodes, so you can understand his apprehension.
Oh, so it's kind of like Dick Clark once a year for the New Year's Rockin' Eve thing. You just drag him out.
Prop him up on a stage and just let him sing and dance for 5 seconds and tell him to go back to the closet.
I don't think Dick Clark's going to be doing any singing and dancing from...
Not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, no.
That's true.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's because you're British. You're on the other side of the ocean.
Yeah, the Americans all know what's going on here, Joshy.
For them.
But yes, on this season finale, this final episode, episode 24, we're going to talk about best and worst games of the year. You know, they're games that we have personally played. There were a lot of video games released in 2011, although I feel most of it was probably crap.
I would agree
Let's
with
hope so.
Well, I mean, there were no major console releases, I mean, aside from the 3DS, and we saw how well they did.
What, you mean not dramatically success?
Not the big success that Nintendo was hoping for. There was a lot of hype for it, and then they just kind of stumbled out of the gate.
To be fair, as of the last sales numbers, aren't they supposedly outpacing the DS as far as sales?
Yeah, but
the
original DS wasn't a hot seller for a long time, so I don't know if that's something to jump down about.
Well, that's true, and they were hoping to make this one kind of a hot seller out of the gate.
But then they peeled out like you do in Mario Kart if you hold down the accelerate button for too long.
Well, who knows? Maybe Mario Kart will be the game that gets them going.
Yes, the infamous, the numbered Mario Kart 7, which Joshy mentioned on the last episode.
Mario Kart, we ran out of ideas.
That Joshy mentioned on the last episode. He's like, why did Nintendo stick a number at the end of it?
There's actually a picture of one of the producers, and it says Mario Kart 7 is the seventh. This is the seventh Mario Kart released for home consoles, so we decided to call it Mario Kart 7. And I think it's an actual transcript taken from an interview, and it's like, oh, well, thank you for clarifying that for us. I see that you did, in fact, just run out of ideas for the name. It's good that we know your thought process.
Time of water.
Yeah, how you can call it Mario Kart 3D, and that would still be acceptable.
I don't know. Joshy's all about subtitles, so...
I am.
If he's one subtitles, I have a fantastic game for him on my worst list.
We'll get to...
Sounds promising.
We'll get to that. Sounded ominous. We'll get to that shortly.
I'm already turned on.
But before we get into the discussion, just want to let you know that you can give us your thoughts on this episode and any other episode of Downloadable Content on the Facebook page at facebook.com/downloadablecontent or also on Twitter at DLContent. Good. Now that that plug's out of the way, we can dive right into the discussion. Best and worst games of 2011, and we're going to start with the worsts.
Oh, can we?
Oh, yes, let's. Because I kind of want to save the best for last, so that'll be the second half.
Yeah, let's not finish this podcast in a depressing mood.
Yeah, let's not finish.
End on a happy note for once.
Yes, instead of, getting to the end, talking about Duke Nukem Forever and just sobbing into your beer.
Yeah.
With that said, that's the game I'm going to start off with first.
Duke Nukem Forever.
As one of the worst games of 2011, we all, and I think you have to be living under a rock to not know that Duke Nukem Forever was 14 years in development.
Which means it's going to be really good, right?
Always.
14 years! I mean, I know Duke Nukem 3D was very popular. I played it when I was younger. I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, then again, I was, just a kid, and, let's see, I'm 26. I'm 12 years old playing this game.
Times were just very different when Duke Nukem 3D came out. I mean, that sort of stuff just was acceptable.
Because it wasn't really done anywhere else. It was so shocking, and that's, I think, a big part of the appeal of the game.
It certainly was. I mean, here you have this big, strong, badass guy who was just completely ego-driven. Just wants to kill things, drink beer, and have sex with women, but
chewing gum and taking names,
more or less. Except he likes to smoke, but
yeah.
But yes, 14 years in the hype machine, and I kept seeing magazine articles. I kept seeing, the game's gonna be released soon. The game's gonna be released soon. Every so often, we got new screenshots.
Usually of a different engine.
Yeah. It started off being. I forget. It's been so long. I actually forget who was the original. 3D Realms.
3D Realms.
3D Realms. Yes, that's right.
Didn't they go bankrupt during the process?
They did.
Yes.
They did. So that already bodes well for a game.
I think it's just incredible that the entire company closed down. We thought, right, we can stop with the joke. It's cancelled, and it still came out.
It's the zombie, It is just the game that wouldn't die, and then it finally came out, and actually, people playing it is what killed it more than it not being played.
I kind of like the hype better than the game. I
mean, its story is much higher than the quality of the product that was released.
Supposedly, and obviously I wouldn't subject myself to playing something like that, but supposedly you can actually kind of play through the game and see it almost like three distinct stages of its development. Early 90s late 90s shooters, early 2000 shooters, and late 2000 shooters, and just how the segments are so different from each other. You can kind of see where these teams sort of, supposedly when Gearbox took it over, they said, oh yeah, it's really close to being done, we just need to plug in a few holes, and apparently, no, that's not the case. It was basically three separate games, and they just kind of tried to link it all together.
Wrap it together with duct tape and bubblegum.
Pretty much, from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
And then finally the game came out in June of 2011, and I remember telling April, her I still don't believe it. I still don't believe the game. I need to see the physical game in my hand.
Wasn't that right around the time the Spider-Man musical opened too? Everybody just assumed it was two hoaxes on the same day.
Yeah, something like that.
I said no, and I went to GameStop and I saw all these cases for Duke Nukem Forever. I'm like, no, I don't believe it. They've been having those in the coming soon pile for 14 years. No. But then it finally was released, and it got eviscerated.
Nothing in human history is going to be able to live up to that kind of hype, though.
No,
of course not.
That's true. I mean, it got panned by everyone. I mean, the game looks like it was made for a Windows 98 system. And I'm looking at the aggregate review scores. Game rankings have the average is about a 49%. Metacritic about 50. I see. And whatever that just was also wanted to put in their 2 cents as well. But looking at like the magazine scores and the online scores, OneUp.com gave it an F. Game Informer 6.75 out of 10, which is generous. Edge 3 out of 10. IGN 5 out of 10. PC Gamer US 80 out of 100.
What the fuck?
Yeah, one of these things is not like the others.
I mean, this is the game where reviewers discovered that they had a whole review scale, not just 7 to 10.
Pretty
yes. That's very true. I just kind of, and we mentioned this in past episodes. I mean, while I don't mind a wide-ranging review scores, this was one of those games that was universally panned by everybody except for PC Gamer US, which was the only...
Yeah, what happened there? Does anybody know?
They were probably paid off. I mean, one of the... if I recall, this was the game where, like, the marketing guy for the game went onto Twitter and just started, like, criticizing all the reviewers and saying, well, we're not going to send you our next review copy because of how poorly this game reviewed.
Yeah, which is totally not a conflict of interest.
And then he got fired. That's
good.
Slight side note, did you guys hear about the Modern Warfare 3 Metacritic reviewing system?
Jim Sterling?
Yeah.
I didn't. Explain that one.
So Jim Sterling is the reviewer for actually, Ron, what site is he normally on? Because I know he does a side feature on The Escapist, but he's normally from somebody else. Anyway, the point is that he gave Modern Warfare 3 a 9.3, and then gave Mario Kart 7 a 5.0, and his explanation for the 5.0 was that the game hasn't changed. That it doesn't do anything different throughout all its iterations.
Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Ha ha.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that one.
Oh.
That's very good.
There's also one where...
Destructoid.
Yeah, Destructoid is what it was. There's also one where, this is a different thing, where, like Metacritic, where you had the user reviews, like a bunch of people were giving it like low scores, like zeros and stuff. And the guy that was I forget the guy's name, he's like one of the developers who helped put out Modern Warfare 3. He's like, if you guys are being honest with the game, that's fine and everything, but if you're just doing it to be douchebags, then stop being douchebags.
Yeah, I mean, unless the game simply destroys your console when you put the disc in, it doesn't deserve a 0.
Yeah, and they were...
The famous lowest score review I ever remember was somebody in one of the gaming mags gave Superman 64 a 0.5, with the actual justification being, well, the system turns on and loads the game when you put the cart in, so I can't give it a 0.
But the game is unplayable.
Well, the game is atrocious.
What game was that again?
Superman 64. This is one of the worst games ever made.
Oh yeah, it's just beyond awful as far as a game. But
it's worth digging at.
That was the review score, was a 0.5, because it said, look, I can, actually it turns on when I hit the power button, so I can't give it a 0.
Yeah, and just a brief note, I'm looking at the aggregate review scores. Game Informer gave it a 1.25 out of 10.
Yeah, well, that was Superman 64.
Yeah, it was. But last thing I'll say about Duke Nukem Forever, and then we can move on to other games. The hilarious side note in all of this is that in August, Take-Two said that Duke Nukem Forever would actually turn a profit for it.
Yeah, but I'm fairly certain that the way they've mixed their accounting is that they're only accounting for the development that Gearbox did, or what they invested in it. I mean, almost certainly for 3D Realms, it did not turn a profit.
Clearly, they're bankrupt.
See, here's the thing too. Imagine this for a moment. The game comes out in 1998 with those graphics and that gameplay.
Yeah, but
it probably would have done better.
Because...
I admit it probably would have done a little bit better.
Yes.
Well, I mean, some of the gameplay would have been considered so far ahead of its time, and the graphics part probably still would have been considered good. But again, 14 years in development.
That is the whole story of Duke Nukem, that they just kept seeing other games come out with better graphics and with new revolutionary systems, and they kept just saying, well, fuck what we're doing, let's start again doing that. And they kept doing it for years.
Yeah, this is an example of a bad development studio getting caught up in the new shiny.
Yeah, I mean, the other problem, just to finish on Duke Nukem, is that not only was it a terrible game, but the character is just way out of his time. It's very difficult to make a video game funny as it is, but Duke Nukem is just immature.
Now it is.
Now. If it was released a couple years into the development, it would have fitted into the time. Now it's just simply unsuitable.
That's very true. All right, Ron, what do you got? Throw out a game.
I've got... Okay, here's one we can probably have a very good discussion on, I feel. I'm going to throw out Dark Souls.
Really?
Ooh, the sequel to Demon Souls.
Yes.
As a good game, I'm assuming, right? Or
no,
as a
worse game.
Really?
Wow. Okay, because
do tell. This will be interesting.
This is going to be fun.
An amazing game.
Ron, let's explain.
See, here's why this game is on the list. It's a very good game. Good gameplay, good controls, nice detailed graphics and everything like that. But
You're not selling your argument.
The one thing the game does wrong that makes it go from a good game to a bad game is that it breaks the golden rule of Demon Souls. Every death, no matter how painful or brutal, was always your fault. In Dark Souls, there are several areas in the game and gaming glitches that happen that is not your fault. You can fight an enemy and have it be a perfect fight for your sense, and you'll still die because when you roll and you roll straight or you roll slightly to the left, the game reads you as rolling very far wide to the left, and you roll off an edge and you die.
So you're talking programming errors.
Yeah, this is a programming error and certain design choices that they made in the game that make the game that break the golden rule. Because, I mean, the best example I can give is, I forget the name of it. It's a section of the game called Undertown or Underdark or something like that, where it's nothing but gigantic bulgy monsters, and you're on a small little on a wooden platform, which moves sometimes, by the way, and you can't really tell whether or not you're hitting the guy because he's got this big ass sword.
Interesting.
Very interesting, because I mean, admittedly, I've heard a lot of wonderful things about this game. A lot of people love this game, but Ron, you strongly feel that it's the programming of the game that really kills it.
Yeah, because I mean, I like the game too because I like a good challenge. It is a very fun game. It's just you go into these certain areas of the game and you see these programming errors come to light, and they make the game. They break that sense of challenge. Yet when you beat the challenge, you feel victorious. They break the game because oh my god, I finally got past this dumb buggy area. Fuck, now I can get back to the actual good part.
So I guess what you're saying is the problem is the game is meant to be incredibly challenging, and that's incredibly rewarding if you have the skill to beat the area and beat the game. But because the game is simply unfair in some areas because it's buggy, it just ruins that challenge and makes it incredibly frustrating to play.
Exactly.
That sucks.
I think that's a completely rational argument for one of the worst games of the year, especially considering how well put together and hyped, how well put together the first one was, and how hyped this one was.
Yeah, there's 3 areas of the game where this happens. Now, admittedly, these areas are not needed to enter once you beat the game initially, because there's a new game plus and all that, and new game plus and all that stuff. But you're still talking about having to go through these sections the first time, and you still have to experience them, and it's very brutal, and it's just not. For me, it ruins what the game was, or what the game is.
Now, admittedly, I have not heard too much about buggy programming for this game. I mean, it's, for such a game that was widely praised.
Yeah, it's not like it's buggy programming. It's just poor level design. Because I mean, the best example I have is like it's literally a walkway that is not much wider than your character, and you've got dogs and poisonous water falling on you, and a lot of other like large bulky enemies that you don't even know are there. And then you have guys that have like very poisonous arrows, and by poison I mean like if you get hit, you almost immediately have to run back to a fire pit to heal, otherwise you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder if a lot of the praise the game received from reviewers is the fact that they were all reviewed by people who accepted the difficulty and were up for the challenge. I mean, if for example, if I had reviewed the game, I would have hated it simply because it was too difficult. So I wonder if a lot of the people, that appreciate the challenge, like you obviously do, and were up for trying to play the game, simply like praised it because we never get games like this, and oh, look how wonderful it is. Obviously the challenge is too difficult for most people, but I can play it. And I wonder if like a lot of people just like slide these bad level designs under the carpet because it's such a wonderful game to them.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. It's the thing is like Demon Souls. Dark Souls is a game where you have your initial like starting area. It gives you the basic controls of the game, which you can learn by reading the instruction manual, and that's it. It doesn't tell you how to fight, it doesn't tell you how to do anything, it doesn't tell you how spells work. It's very much open-ended. There is a story involved, quote unquote, but it's very non-focused. You can literally get to the world area and in character, like you can be like a level 5 character, which is like what most characters start out as. And you can go from level 5 right into like the end game area, like it's like 5 feet away from the starting area, which is like this designed for like level 50 and up.
Well, that's something I'll have to look into, because that is certainly on one of the games I want for this Christmas. Because I was introduced to Demon Souls from Ben, and I enjoyed it, as difficult as it was. And so that's definitely something I'm going to have to watch for. But that's a very, very interesting point you bring up about how bad level design can totally kill a game that is otherwise supposed to be very good.
Yeah, if it didn't have this bad level design, I would say it is just as good, if not better, than Demon Souls, because it's more the same, but it also gives you a couple more like options in terms of like spell choices and character creation and things like that.
Interesting. Alrighty. Well, with that said, let's move on to another game considered worst of the year. Joshy!
Hello.
On you!
I think I have a fairly controversial choice.
More controversial than Dark Souls?
Which is L.A. Noire.
Oh! Interesting, yes. Very interesting. Another game that had the hype blown out of it. So, Joshy, go on and explain.
So, the reason I'm suggesting L.A. Noire is because I quit playing it. I was bored of it. It's a boring game.
Which is not usually what Rockstar aims to do.
No, I mean, to be fair, I don't believe this was, I believe, published by Rockstar, but I don't remember who the actual main developer was.
Team Bondi was that Australian developer, actually, who got shut down after they finished this game because it took them 5 or 6 years.
Yep, another one of those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the main problem with L.A. Noire is it got a lot of praise, particularly for its the technology they built for facial recognition, so that they could build these incredibly realistic-looking characters, so that when you're in case, sorry, if you don't know, the main premise of L.A. Noire is you're a cop detective. You go around trying to solve crimes. You investigate the crime scene. You interview a lot of people, and then there's normally a short action sequence where you try to chase the bad guy down. I mean, but the main praise of this game was in these interview scenes where you're meant to watch this very realistic looking person who's been like facial captured and by real life actors and stuff, and you're meant to try and work out from their facial expressions whether they're lying or telling the truth or hiding something and stuff like that. The part where the game falls apart though is that it's black and white. It's incredibly simple. If someone is lying to you, they will say something with a stone face and then for a split second look shiftily to the right. And that says to you to press the lie button. When they're telling the truth, they'll just stare at you and look slightly uncomfortable. That may mean they're hiding something. I mean, it's for all the promise it brought, it's just dead simple. And then there's the rest of the game where to like investigate crime scenes, you walk around in a room and you feel for vibrations and you pick up items. That's it. And then the only other part of the game is where you get to drive around an empty city which has nothing to do with it. It's incredibly massive, meaning you take like 5 minutes between events. And then there are incredibly short action sequences where you get to like run down an alley and jump on somebody and then have a quick time event. And then the game does this. That was all very interesting and quite cool the first time. And then it does it 50 more times. It just repeats itself again and again and again. And I just gave up on it. It's a boring game.
Kind of makes you wonder what they were doing for 5 years.
They were trying to do this incredible facial capturing technology is what they were doing, not making a video game. And the faces admittedly look great, but they weren't the acting in it is all right, but as I said, the way they introduce lying is to look slightly shifty. It's not realistic.
And that's actually one of the complaints that was given by some review scores. I mean, even though it was largely positive, some reviewers thought that the game had way too many redundancies. And in doing so, you lost control of the player and subsequently lost control of the game.
And one of the other things it promised was like this great choice of like choose your own adventure. The fact that you could like be in an interview and you could decide whether or not you were going to arrest this person and how the story was going to go down. But really, you had no real choice. You had the option. You have 3 options. There's agree that they're telling the truth, say that they're probably hiding something, or say that they're lying. And to say that they're lying, you have to produce evidence that they're doing so. And the game is like really strictly structured in that to say they're lying, you have to have had to seen the exact evidence which proves they're lying and introduce it to them at that point. So say, for example, someone murdered someone and there was a bloody dagger or something and it had their fingerprints on them. This is a very difficult example to produce, but say that that they had like dirt on their hands, and so that proves they were in the alley. Unless you had seen that exact evidence and introduced it to them there, and the game agreed that yes, this is exactly the time that you may produce this evidence, you can't go down that line of investigation. I can't introduce evidence related to that would suggest something which would get me further into the investigation, because that's not the exact evidence the game decided I needed to present. It's very structured, and there really is no choice.
That's actually I don't know if any of you guys have played the Phoenix Wright games, but that's
what
problem.
I was thinking too.
You run into that, you run into that sometimes too, where it's like I can clearly make the leap if I was allowed to.
Exactly.
But the game thinks I'm going A to C without trying to skip B, and I don't exactly know. Like I can make a reasonable argument about where B fits in, but without having the exact piece of B that it wants me to fit, I can't really. I can't make this particular argument.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because you know what you're trying to say, and if you were actually allowed to have this discussion with another person, you'd have no argument, no problem making the argument.
Yeah, because with us, like in real life, we got this thing called like what's the legal mumbo jumbo? It's like plausible deniability is
plausible deniability. That's what it's called.
Yeah, and there's the reverse of that, which is like plausible assumption. We're like, okay, if you follow this chain of logic you can follow a chain of logic from A to C without us being 100% certain on B. And generally, even in the courtroom, like you can generally get to C without too much trouble of worrying about B.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the game doesn't allow you to be Sherlock Holmes, where you could make the jump, very quickly. You have to actually the game has to actually know that you've done this exact thing. This sounds like
a case of if you can't be Sherlock Holmes, you have to play CSI.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have every single bit of evidence, otherwise it doesn't fly. Whereas as a human, you can make good assumptions, but you can't question them about it because you have to provide the exact evidence it wants.
Yeah, so I mean, there's I can understand why that happens, and it certainly makes sense, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Oh yeah, obviously. I mean, I'm a programmer in my day job. I can see exactly why this game design appeared. I'm just saying it's a crap game.
Fair enough.
Alrighty, with that declaration, Ben, let's go to you.
So I sadly am going to have to break the mold. I don't have a game that everybody else loves that I just flat out hate. To be honest, I was thinking about what I would talk about during this podcast earlier, and I realized I didn't really know that much about too many bad games, but one stuck out of my mind, and I went to Metacritic, and I'm happy that it made the bottom like 15 or so.
You were justified.
Yes, I feel better. Well, of course, you look at this. It's actually, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's number 10 on their bottom-rated games of the year, so I'll take that.
I had Duke Nukem Forever, so you go right ahead.
And again, it's not even a game that was all that well hyped, and the people paying attention sort of knew how bad this game was really going to be. But X-Men Destiny. Here was a title that I know we want Silicon Knights to just really want them to be so good after Eternal Darkness and the Twin Snakes, and they're just not anymore. They're really not. It's kind of like watching a slow motion car wreck, to be honest.
Hasn't half the company kind of left because they're kind of broke?
No, I think they were fired.
A lot of them were fired.
Okay.
Yeah. They laid off about 75 people at one point, which is a substantial amount of their workforce, which was odd because I think they just got a grant from the Canadian government to hire more people. So since they got it, not entirely sure why they had to fire everybody. But basically, the idea behind this game was supposed to be that you get to pick one of a few mutants, and you get to pick which side of the war you want to be on, if you want to be with the X-Men or if you want to join Magneto and the Brotherhood. And then the story was supposed to, like so many other games, quote, the story will develop based on your choices. No, it will not. The story will shoehorn you into certain choices that will maybe have a slight change on dialogue trees. It doesn't actually change the story. And we all know this. So, I mean, it was a game that was making so many promises that we'd all heard of before. And apparently this game already was a little infamous because some early screenshots leaked out and they didn't look very good, and Silicon Knights defended them by saying, well, wait, they're really early. But based on the timing of it, we realized, and a few other pieces of evidence, people realized, no, they're not that early. They're just not that good looking. On top of which, it was supposed to be something like a 5-hour game that you would just keep replaying based on your different quote-unquote choices. And the one thing that the game was supposed to do well, which is combat, apparently it didn't do all that well. So really, you kind of just have something of a mess. And to kind of go along with that, the scores off here, Game Informer gave it a 7 out of 10, which is interesting. But
was that the outlier?
That was the outlier. Eurogamer and Game Radar gave it 5s. GameSpot gave it a 4, except for the Wii version, which got a 3. OneUp.com gave it a D+. Metacritic ranking actually was rather impressive. The aggregate number was a 33. So there you go.
This was a game where you didn't play as the X-Men, right? You made your own character.
Correct.
you got to pick one of, I think, 3 different cookie cutter stereotypes. And,
Right. Okay.
The jock, the hot girl, and then the nerd. I think the nerd guy was the third one.
So I think I can spot their mistake right there.
What do you mean mistake? There
no
were
character
more than
creation.
one. There was more than one. Singular is not doing this game justice.
Sure, but I'm fairly sure their initial mistake was anyone who buys an X-Men game wants to play an X-Men.
Well, to be fair, somebody's selling that upcoming game, Gotham City Imposters, where you run around in Gotham City as neither Batman nor any of his villains. But
Well,
yeah, no.
that'd be a poor game as well.
Well, except
Well,
it's a shooter.
it's a shooter. It's like Team Fortress 2, only Gotham City.
Okay, so that could be cool, but this is a very story-based X-Men game where you don't get to play any of the famous characters.
Yeah, and can we also
RPG.
and can we also think of the ridiculousness of you're playing a game where you just discover your powers, and 3 or 4 days later you have to be more powerful than all of these other established characters.
Of course.
I mean, I get it. All these games are going to have people that start off more awesome than you, and you end up having to be the super awesome hero, and that's fine and that's fair.
Mhm.
But not usually just in like 3 or 4 days.
You said that you can pick Magneto's side or the X-Men side, so does that mean the games are completely different based on which side you choose?
So again, supposedly that was how they hyped it, but no, apparently not.
So you just
Apparently
play the exact same levels?
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
That's probably what would happen, is because it takes place in L.A. or San Francisco.
Sure, it's a generic enough city. It doesn't probably really matter.
Insert city here.
I'll put it to you this way, Josh. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. They have one plot listing, not if you choose this option, you have this is what the plot is, and if you choose this option, you have this plot.
See, I feel that
It's-
could have been a great opportunity for replayability right there, is to
Yeah.
have very different storylines that may be intercrossed with the other character based on which side you chose.
Yeah, I mean, apparently what happens is you have different side characters assisting you depending on which side you choose, but not
But
that
you're
you do
effectively
anything different.
doing the same
You're doing the
thing,
exact same thing, apparently.
despite the fact you may be evil.
Yes. But you have they have a different ending.
Oh, of course, good. Wonderful.
Yes. But it's not really, and I mean, even those games where like, the morality systems tend to, or where you choose one faction over the other, and that's really kind of what this is. Let's be honest, this is just a simplified version of the whole morality system that some games like to pull. A lot of times they end up coming down to one decision near the end of the game, not what you've been doing all game long. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of just.
It seems to be a crucial flaw in the design that you would pick to be good or evil at the beginning and then do exactly the same thing.
It seems like a crucial flaw in the design that you would have to make one decision at any point during the course of the game that's going to affect everything else during the course of the game, regardless of any other millions of decisions that you could make.
Yeah.
There you go.
So let's add that to the pile of horseshit.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's probably one of the worst games. I realize I didn't play that many bad games this year. Maybe I'm just getting more refined and learning what to stay away from.
I think we're both getting a bit more refined in our old age, Ben. It's
Well, that and there's no more novelty effect of, I'm going to play a bad game just for the sake of playing a bad game. It's not
Nah.
interesting anymore.
yeah.
It's definitely wise to try and avoid something unless you think it's going to be good, which is why I was so disappointed to go out and buy a brand new game and discover I hated it.
Yeah.
Well, we've got just a couple minutes left in the first half. I know, Ron, you actually had a short list of bad games, so if you want, I'll let you hit a couple of them just briefly. So
Already.
throw out a couple and just very briefly.
2 of them we already mentioned, Duke Nukem Forever and Dark Souls. I'm going to throw out Michael Jackson: The Experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't. Go on.
Hold on!
Thor: The God of Thunder.
Now, I heard some hype for that game, so explain a little bit in detail.
This is yet another example of why a licensed adaptation game is wrong and should never be done ever again. It's got game-breaking glitches, repetitive gameplay, and boring fights.
The end.
Yeah, pretty much. And the last one I have is... Hang on, I have to look at the name of it because I don't remember off the top of my head. Oh, I also can't pronounce it.
It was that bad.
Artoneko Koga, Nell of Arceal.
What?
Never heard of it.
Wait, type that. I feel like somebody made fun of that one recently. Could you just type out the name on the chat so I can see it? Oh yeah. I think the Escapist. They have a web series called the Unskippable, where they review, like, they make fun of and basically do a running commentary, like Mystery Science Theater, to the opening cutscene of certain games. They covered that one, and one of the jokes that they said when that came on screen was, "Come on, the only word in there that's actually a real word is of."
Yeah. Besides having the unpronounceable name, it's a cookie cutter JRPG if I ever saw one. It's bland characters, uninteresting story, and the battle system is like the only decent thing about it. It's basically almost the exact. It's confusing. You have to protect someone, and you only control one character, even though you have 3/4 party members on the battlefield.
A little bit like Dragon Quest 1.
Imagine going into a shop and trying to ask for that game.
You'd have to walk up to a GameStop and just hand them a note.
Yeah.
Do you have this?
Yeah, and this to me is like an example of a studio that's fallen very far. I believe it's like Nippon Ichi did this game.
Well,
I'm sure they have to have a bad game now and then.
everyone needs a
Yeah,
bad
but
game.
now it's getting to the point now where like the only good game they have is Disgaea, and even then,
They've kind of milked it.
Yeah, there's a fourth one out, and it doesn't make me want to play it anymore. Like I think they're starting to hit the bottom of the barrel, unfortunately.
Alrighty, so there we go. We've gone around talking about some of our what do we think our worst games of the year are. In our second half, so we can end this on a happy note, we talk about the best games of 2011. How about that? Games we actually like. What a shock.
I don't like video games.
What are you doing here?
I'm just here to complain.
Yeah,
Oh, of course.
Of course you are. Sorry, Yahtzee, you ain't. But in the meantime, here, have some music, some intermission music. We'll be back on the second half of downloadable content. finale here on Downloadable Content, talking best and worst games of 2011. We're all still here, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Joshy's here. All right, good. Joshy's here. Ben and Ron, maybe, I don't know.
Nah, I left already.
He left already.
We killed Ron.
Joshy just drank another can of British for this episode, for this second half, so...
Pure British.
Probably tastes of Marmite, but
Tastes of victory.
Dun 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 dun.
You just gained 254 experience points.
And 90 gil. There you go. All right. So we've discussed our own personal thoughts, worst games of 2011. Now we're going to go to the best games of 2011.
Wait, there were good games released in 2011?
A few.
Mostly in the last 30 days.
Yeah, pretty much. Except for that one that we all forgot about was released.
Yes.
So let's see. I opened up the first half. I'm going to switch to somebody else to start first. Let's see. Ben, I'll start with you.
So I have two games that are really... I realized I played only about like 6 or 7 games that were... Well, I only bought about 6 or 7 games from this year during this calendar year. So it's not exactly as if I have a long, extensive list. The two standouts for me are going to be fairly obvious standouts. Portal 2, which, like I said, nobody remembers, was actually released this year because it was way, way back in that ancient time of April. And of course, Skyward Sword from about 2 weeks ago. Pros and cons on both. But they're put between a rock and a hard place. I'd have to really think about which one I thought was the better game, but they're both really just excellent titles. Portal has its usual impressive both campaign and co-op maps. It's light on story, but you get enough, and it's very funny, and it's really challenging and interesting. And Zelda is, well, except for the fact that you have a little dongle at the end of the Wii controller, if you're like me, a Zelda title. In fact, the only reason I have to ding points from Zelda is the fact that it showed that my Wii is about to die, but that's not really the game's fault so much as my own.
Well, I mean, I can understand. I mean, I think I fail. I can't even think of any other good Wii game that came out at all this year. As I said in the intro, the Wii kind of just fell right off the map. It seemed. I mean, I did not buy a single Wii game this year. I mean, I may get Skyward Sword for Christmas. If I don't, then I'm getting it December the 26th. But I just, taking a look at the release list for 2011, I was hard pressed to find really anything for the Wii, anything of quality. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the list now. There were, like Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. I had heard about that because the Lego games always seem to get a pretty good chuckle.
Yeah. Although somebody pointed out the humor behind the last Harry Potter Lego game was that you have all these really dark moments from the series portrayed in Legos with this goofy sense of humor, and it just doesn't quite do it justice for the emotional impact of various moments.
Not really.
No, I can't imagine that it's all that good.
So, I mean, obviously, probably. I mean, I know I haven't played Skyward Sword yet, but you bring it up as one of your personal bests for the year. So, if you can, without giving away too many spoilers, explain a little bit why you thought Skyward Sword and Portal 2, besides the fact that they were, you felt that they were really good.
I mean, Skyward Sword continues kind of the Zelda franchise series, but honestly, it's a game where I'm really finding myself drawn into a lot of the side quests and side missions. Actually, Batman Arkham City was another game that was really good for this because all the side quests were like, well, if you don't do this, people are going to die. So they're really good at imbuing that sense of urgency and importance to the side missions.
Except for the shitty phone calls.
Well, hey, no, people would still die, and I like that one. But the whole with Zelda, I just feel like the characters are so much more well-rounded and fleshed out. Actually, something you touched on earlier, Josh, you kind of amuses me in this situation. When you're in a cutscene, obviously they're game characters, and the artists and the programmers don't necessarily remember to have them do things like look around or blink during cutscenes. They generally kind of just stare at you looking all dead-eyed. But in Skyward Sword, that's not actually true. The characters will sort of, you'll see like little twitches or little slight movements when the character's just normally talking to you during a point when, say, in other games, they would just kind of be staring blankly back at you. So I thought that was really nice that they took the time and went through the trouble to program in those sorts of responses. But
neat.
Yeah, it's just it's a well-made game. It's entertaining. The combat is definitely took some getting used to because of the Wii Motion Plus requirement, but it's still very impressive. And it's just a really fun game.
How much does it break away from the traditional Zelda formula?
So I mean,
doesn't.
So there are still dungeons, and there are still areas before dungeons that you have to go through, and there are still weapons, but that there are items that you'll pick up, and lo and behold, you'll have to use most of the items in the ensuing boss fight that you come upon. I know it's such a huge shocker, but they actually there's an upgrade system for like all of your items. There's some new features that they put in, and I'm decently far into the game. I'm probably about 20-25 hours into the game, although I'm not even sure I'm even at the halfway point yet.
Okay, hang on. I'm near the end. Tell me what dungeon you're at.
Well, no, I don't want to get into it just because I don't want to spoil it, but the point I was going to make was that there doesn't seem to be any real level of connection to the other Zelda titles the way some of the more recent games have also had, with obviously Wind Waker being a direct sequel to Ocarina and Majora's Mask kind of being the offshoot. Twilight Princess still sort of had a bit more of a connection at this point in the game than I feel that Skyward Sword does, and it's not a bad thing. It still tells a great story, and it's still very engaging and original. The one thing for me that really makes it is the art style, because it's a great blend between Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. So you have characters that aren't 100% realistic or 100% human, but at the same time they look real enough so that it's not just overly cartoony and silly. So it really does a great job of blending those things together so that you're not quite sure what you're looking at all the time, but it looks really good.
That was a very funny thing about, I think, the last two games, because people gave Wind Waker so much shit for its, I think, brilliant art style. And we want a realistic Zelda game, yada, yada, yada. And I think looking at Twilight Princess retrospectively, people actually weren't that keen on the realistic style.
There was a lot with a realistic style you just can't do that you can do with a cartoony style, and that's why I like this, because it's enough, but
I think this is definitely the good mix between the two.
Exactly. And as far as Portal goes, I kind of covered all that. It's you kind of know what you're getting into if you played the first one. If you don't, it's a very intelligent puzzle game.
Portal 2 as a narrative experience is just an incredible game.
Yeah, it's really well done. It's a great story. The voice acting is top notch, just beyond. I mean, especially considering you're basically dealing with two computers talking, to you. It's really just very, very well done. And Joshi has a personal flair for it, considering one of the main characters is British.
And he's the best character.
He was a very well done character. But I mean, there's some genuinely funny lines. There's some intelligent humor. The puzzles are really well put together. The 2-player puzzles are also really well put together. They're supporting it with DLC. It's a great all around package. And especially at this point, if you haven't looked to pick it up, it's definitely recommended because it's going to be a little bit cheaper. And then, like I said,
it's fantastic. And if you haven't played Portal at all, you should get both games, because the first one is so cheap, if not free, depending on what day you try to buy it.
Yeah, it's usually something like $5 or maybe like 20 tops. And then honorable mention would definitely also go to Batman. It's great combat system, very dark story, very gritty, but not like over the top and excessive. Very true to, I think, the Batman characters and the Batman franchise. A lot of villains. Sometimes they kind of don't spend enough time on each guy, but you can kind of understand that with a sandbox. But for a sandbox game to have this much content and this well-developed world, I think is really, really impressive. So definitely also highly recommended on the list.
Especially with a pretty quick turnaround, too, because from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City, it's like been, what, a year?
2, I think, but still.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
It's a very quick turnaround, especially for a sequel.
See, I really enjoyed Arkham City, but I was slightly disappointed in some areas. I mean, they pitched it as an open world game, which it's really not. I mean, there's an open world area which you move around in, but for the most part, it's simply to get to the next linear part of the story.
Yeah, I mean the level design was I can see where you're coming from with that, but the environments, even the indoor environments, some of them are very large and very well designed.
Oh no,
so
yeah,
you're
I
right,
mean
it's
when the problem I had with it is you moved around in this quote open world. You got to the next bit of the story, and then you were in a closed environment again. The environment was still fantastic, but it's not a GTA. It's not an open world in the way they pitched it.
No, but to be fair, an entirely open world isn't as intimidating. You're not in the bad guy's area. You're not in a section that where he has guys littered around. It's not. I can see why that would have been a necessity for a Batman themed game.
Sure, but to be honest, what I'm probably getting at is they probably didn't need it to be an open world game, and they probably shouldn't have tried.
Well, I can agree with that. I can see what you're saying.
The only other criticism I really had on it was that this game I still really loved and it was cool, but they can't do this again a third time. They can't keep just releasing. I know it's a cliche to say, but and Modern Warfare does it 7 billion times. But the first Arkham Asylum was revolutionary. This one is just releasing the same game again, and it's evolutionary. They made it slightly better. If they're going to do this again in 2 years, it needs to be a totally different game again.
Well, which is always going to be the hardest thing to do. But
of course, but I don't think they can get a slide the third time. Is what I mean.
No, I'd agree.
What they should do is, in the comic books, they have the Batman Incorporated, where you have a Batman for every country in the world. They should do something with that.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. They did drop some.
Cool,
I'm sorry, go on. Go ahead.
Yeah, how cool would it be to play a Batman that's in like Saudi Arabia, and you have to do some like Prince of Persia-esque platforming, and then you jump to the Batman of I don't know, some Nigeria, for example, and then you have to do some like jungle stealthing.
Yeah.
So now you're turning Batman into Solid Snake.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, but is that a bad thing?
I mean, they've already dropped some. Go ahead.
So I don't want to be really negative on the game. I still think it was an awesome game. The combat system is just fantastic, and the characters were just awesome. I think their interpretation of Mr. Freeze was the best they've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, they've already dropped some hints about what they're going to do with a third game in the story of the second one, and I definitely think it's sold well enough for them to say, okay, we're going to have to release another one. So it's really just a question of what direction they're going to take it in. But I think that you're right. There is some room for improvement as far as interacting with the world. But the problem is, how do you go back from a quote-unquote open world? I mean, you can't. You can only kind of move forward and move up. And that's when you really start to get into trouble, is like they build this as being something like 5 times more playable space than Arkham Asylum. And it's like, well, okay, but what are you going to, like, what do you do now?
A lot of that is penis measuring and bullet points on boxes. Basically, the open world did not have a huge impact on how good the game was.
No, I agree, but that, like you said, it's penis measuring. It's bullet points on PowerPoint slides to like the higher ups who are going to support this.
Yeah,
you need some quote unquote sellable points, so you go bigger. You don't go smaller.
To take Ron's example, and a game where you're globe trotting as Batman isn't open world because each area will be linear, but it's bigger because it's the world.
That's true. I don't know. We'll have to see what they do, and hopefully just another 2 years. Assuming the world hasn't ended by then.
Oh yes, there is that. So.
Yeah, there's no point about talking about games next year.
Well, just until December.
Yes. So, all right, good. I'm gonna throw out a game now. This actually came out very early in 2011. We're going back to the ancient lands of January. So farther back than your April there, Ben.
You just have to one-up me, don't you? Every single time.
I have to try. I have to at least make the attempt. I might not always succeed, but I do have to try. I'm going to talk about Dead Space 2.
Ooh.
Because I am a huge survival horror fan. And after playing the first Dead Space and loving that game, it's very rare that I actually go out and actually reserve a video game. This was one of them. Of which I was glad too, because if you reserved it at GameStop, you were given a limited edition release of the game, which came with Dead Space Extraction, which was originally a Wii title. But anyway, Dead Space 2 picks up shortly after where Dead Space 1 leaves off. 3 years between the end of the first game and the start of the second game, and it's one of the few survival horror games that I have played, the first game, which gave me a rush. Very few games, survival horror games, have provided that sort of reaction. I think Eternal Darkness was probably one of the first. Eternal Darkness, I was scared shitless playing through it. One of the few times, I'm playing through it and I'm visibly shaking as I'm progressing through Eternal Darkness, because okay, what the fuck's behind that door? So I was kind of hoping for the same thing with Dead Space 2, and in large part I did get that. I mean, the game starts you off immediately with all hell breaks loose. Isaac, who was the main character of the first game, who is also the same for the second game, you start off in a straitjacket, the necromorphs come unleashing hell, go. No weapons, no nothing, you're in a straitjacket, have fun. So you don't have time to build up to the calamity and chaos. You are plunged right into it. After the opening cutscene, they just give you control. They're like, okay, you're on your own, have fun. And so it begins a mad dash. I really enjoyed the story of the game a lot. But one of the biggest things I give praise for is they finally made Isaac. No, they took away his silent protagonist status. They gave him a voice. Because I mean, while the silent hero type may work for some games, Zelda, Mario, Cloud, I guess.
Well, Mario isn't a very silent character.
Well,
woo!
I would think the silent hero doesn't work in survival horror. I don't think it ever has. Because how can you not say something while everything is falling to shit, be it zombies or monsters or otherwise? How you just sit there and all you can do is just, grunt in pain or scream. I mean, really. So they finally give Isaac a voice, which was an extremely welcome change, and it was a game that I could not put down. The only real negative I found with the game is that it started to get repetitive. Whereas in the first game, the necromorphs had a habit of bursting out at you when you least expected it. Dead Space 2 decided to say, okay, we're just going to bombard you with enemies all game. So the shock value was incredibly diminished in this game, to the point of annoyance, because there would be long stretches of the game where every single room you encountered, every single room you walked into, you would then be hit with this flood of enemies and you'd be forced to waste all of your ammo just dispatching them, otherwise you would be dead just from sheer being outnumbered.
So would you say this was much more of a combat-heavy game then?
incredibly much more combat heavy. I mean, the first game, combat was very important, but I think Dead Space 2, they took the shock value away. It was no longer you'll startle the crap out of you with this flood of enemies. It was you after a while you just started to expect it. Like, okay, I just cleared another 30 enemies. Now I'm gonna go through this door, and here comes another 30 enemies. All right.
So the question is it a horror game anymore?
Well, it's still defined as one.
Yeah, from what I saw of it, like, this is my slight against it, is that the first one, it was always a lot of situational setting horror, and then you're like, oh fuck, there's a necromorph crawling out of a wall or popping out of a wall, a la Alien style. Whereas this one, this seems more like a Resident Evil 4 or 5, like massive zombies, and you have to ply your way through them all to get to the next mission objective.
That's actually a very good analogy. It did start to have that sort of feel where, just huge sections of the game just have torrent after torrent of necromorphs. I mean, yes, it sacrificed the shock value that was present in the first game, but it still felt rewarding to get through all of that, despite some frustration of dying simply because you were just so totally outnumbered. It was universally acclaimed. It had positive reviews up and down. Looking at the aggregate scores, really the lowest score anyone ever gives it is from a publication called Extreme Gamer. That's the lowest score, is an 8.8 out of 10.
And who reads Extreme Gamer?
I don't know. It's an online site based out of Canada.
Canada, eh? I think it's pronounced Canada.
Yeah, I just call it Canada.
So what I'm hearing is you prefer, or maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that you preferred the original Dead Space.
In terms of frustration level, I think Dead Space 1 had less of that because, again, you weren't expecting a lot of it. Dead Space 2, you now had an idea of what to expect, and in some locations, it became almost repetitive. So while overall the gameplay was very good, the gameplay is virtually identical to the first game, with controls and everything, which is some very slight modifications. Dead Space 2 had it was a little bit more repetitious, and I didn't like it as good as the first game, but I still enjoyed it immensely.
So still one of the best games you played this year, but not as good as its predecessor.
Correct.
Cool.
I mean, I don't know how big survival horror fans you three are, but
I played the last two Resident Evil games, which are more survival action than survival action than survival horror. Don't get me wrong, there are some moments that were kind of like, oh, well, that's not going to be fun, but it's more of just the, oh, crap, I'm going to deal with all these guys, or like, wow, I don't want to deal with that asshole, than like genuine, scary, like give you nightmares type things. It's no different.
Yeah.
It's no different than the feeling you get when like you're playing something like Halo and you walk into a room full of bad guys. I mean, it's just like, well, I hope I have enough ammo to deal with all this.
Whereas with Dead Space 1, like, you walk into a room, you see like two necromorphs, and you're like, oh fuck, I've only got like 5 bullets left. What the hell am I gonna do?
Yeah, it's not quite the same thing.
Although luckily the enemies do drop copious amounts of ammo and health.
Convenient.
Very. Just like in the last two Resident Evil games. 4 and 5, where enemies are just dropping.
It's like in Final Fantasy. It's like Final Fantasy. Thank God all those monsters collect gold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean they need to buy stuff too.
Yeah, I never understood why the Ravens in Resident Evil 4 had so much money on them.
I know, that was one of the more unanswered questions. I was like, why?
The life of Raven is very expensive.
Yes.
Oh, clearly, yeah.
They're a fan of shiny baubles.
Yes.
Alrighty, so I've thrown out Dead Space 2. Ron, let's go to you.
I'm going to throw out Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Oh.
And the main slight against it, which is very widely voiced, is the annoying boss battles, which
you know why they're terrible, don't you?
Because there's no connection to the story, you can't talk your way out of them.
And they were developed by a different company.
That too. Other than that, this is a fantastic game. It does. I feel like it does the Deus Ex brand proud, and by brand I mean the first game. The second game. Because the second game really isn't.
It is now officially a series.
Yeah. Because you have 3 games out. It's a series now. The gameplay I think was very good. There's a lot of character customization involved, and it certainly does propose a lot of like philosophical questions to you, but doesn't beat you over the head with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, sure, you can go through and be a combat dude and beat people up and with a whole bunch of ammo and stuff like that, but you're gonna find pretty quickly that you need to do some sort of stealth along the way, because you can't run and gun the entire time. Because even though you're, for lack of a better term, a cyborg, you're still pretty fragile.
Mm-hmm.
Published by Square Enix. I did not know that.
Yes, it's an Eidos game, which means Square has now acquired all their titles.
Yep.
Which means Tomb Raider is now a Square title?
Yep.
Oh, good. That means I expect to see Tonberries in the reboot of Tomb Raider.
Yeah, probably not a bad expectation to have for yourself.
They had slide aside here. They had a joke about that in Deus Ex. They had a poster for Final Fantasy 27 or something like that.
That's good. But so I picked up Deus Ex a while ago, but due to other games, haven't got very far into it. But what I have played, I really enjoyed the whole combat and the stealth. It seems to be a really good game.
Yeah. There's 4 possible endings. Again, this is a slight of most modern video games, but you don't have to choose the ending until the very, very end. You can quite literally, you can save before your choice, and then go to the 4 buttons and cause each of the 4 endings.
Okay.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I hate in those games when it's literally, it just comes down to the one decision you make at the last possible second.
It's annoying, but it's more so because the game, it took me almost 40 hours to beat, and I don't want to play through a game 40 hours 4 times for all 4 endings. I just go on YouTube and watch the videos.
I understand when you do it, but it doesn't make sense that the game designers are making those games. I understand if they're going to give you the option to totally do it, but it's like, what? Why is that happening?
It's looking at the review scores for Deus Ex. I mean, again, widespread critical acclaim. The official, the UK magazine, the official Xbox magazine, gave it a perfect score.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Yeah, it's not a perfect game, but it's definitely one of the best games of the year.
I mean, again, some of the reviews mentioned some of the criticism you pointed out, Ron. Poor boss fights, repetition, horribly repetitious arena fights.
Yeah, kinda.
And funnily enough, with this particular game, there was some controversy surrounding it with GameStop.
With the pre-ordering it, and you get certain items.
Well, according to the Wikipedia article for this game, GameStop came under fire from critics when customers discovered that content had been removed from the original packaging of the game. They had instructed employees to remove
yeah.
They'd instructed employees to remove coupons for a free copy of Human Revolution on OnLive, which is an online digital distribution service. They stated that the coupon promoted a competitor of one of its subsidiaries.
And yet they had no problem with the Steam code in Portal 2.
So as an apology, GameStop began giving customers a $50 gift card to those who had purchased Deus Ex Human Revolution for PC, but prior to August 26th, and who brought the issue up to their staff.
Why didn't they just give them the code back? I mean, they must have a pile of them.
Yeah, assumedly that they have literally an entire stack somewhere that they just
surely that would have
burned.
been much cheaper.
The stack's probably buried along with ET in Arizona.
Besides, OnLive barely works. I mean, they'll be promoting it to say, oh yes, this is a service I could use, but it's terrible.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, man, I'm so happy I saw what this was, so I know what not to ever do.
And also, most people ignore everything in the game box.
Yeah, that's also true.
That is very true. All right, Joshy, it's on to you.
Yeah, woo!
I'm gonna close with you.
So, I have one game that we've all neglected to mention, but I want to mention 3 runner-up beforehand. So there's 2 downloadable games that were awesome that came out this year, which is Limbo and Bastion.
Ah, yes.
So Limbo is a very stylized black and white puzzle game where it's a 2D left to right game where you're exploring a world and there's puzzles and stuff. I don't really want to talk about it too much because anything you could say about it is a spoiler. It's very short, it's a cheap game, and it's an awesome experience, and you should simply check it out. And Bastion is much more of an action-oriented 2D isometric
like
perspective
action adventure
game.
RPG sort of thing.
And it's a very explore these worlds and collect things and fight guys. Very button mashy type of game, and it's a really cool stylized game. It's got a great look about it, about how the world sort of like builds up around you and then falls away, and the whole thing is narrated. That's probably the best bit. It's a really cool game, and the music is awesome.
I've played some of it. It reminded me immediately when I started playing it of the isometric layout in Super Mario RPG.
Yes.
That was one of the first things I thought of. But yes, I do like the narration, and it's very cool listening basically to a play-by-play of what you're doing. That's the great part, the fact that the narration changes depending on what you did. For like a very simple example, that you start a level and there's 2 ways you can go. Whichever way you pick, he comments on that. He's
like the kid travels south towards the docks where the good
probably
times
will
were
regret
had.
that.
Yeah,
it's very interesting, and it's, you know, when I played a little bit of it, it kind of reminded me. One of the things that I strongly felt about it is that it felt like you were playing a book.
Yes.
And it was just a very, very nifty and keen mechanic. It's a short game.
Yeah, and again, not very expensive and downloadable, so really worth checking out. So the other runner-up sort of thing is I really want to mention Sonic Generations, because I really think they should be given credit for making a bloody decent Sonic game.
You can do that?
Apparently so. So there are a lot of problems still with Sonic Generations, which I won't spend time going over. But if you can find it cheap and you like Sonic and you hated what they did in Sonic 4 and Sonic Unleashed and Sonic the Hedgehog, I mean, they've made so many crap Sonic games for so many years. It's a wonder that they could actually make a good one. But Sonic Generations is a truly awesome game. You play as both classic Sonic and 3D Sonic. Each level has an Act 1 and an Act 2. An Act 1 where you play as 2D classic Sonic, and an Act 2 where you play as the 3D Sonic from Sonic Adventure. The physics, the bloody physics in Sonic, which they simply broke like a few years ago, and Sonic 4 was just awful because of it, work perfectly. Jumps feel right. It feels fast. It's just a really good game.
I've heard a lot of good things about it, so...
There's still a lot of problems with it, and it's really short, and the boss battles are crap. But if you can find it cheap, it's really worth picking up.
Excellent.
And finally, the actual game I want to mention, and the one we should have talked about at the very beginning of this podcast, it's Skyrim.
Naturally. The game that I've lost so many of my friends to.
Skyrim is the fifth Elder Scroll game. It's the sequel to Oblivion, which came out near the beginning of this generation. And it's a very open world RPG. Basically, from the beginning, there's a short scene at the beginning, and then you're dumped in the world, and it just says "go." It's so fantastic to explore the world. It's a stunning looking game. The combat is really good. The music is amazing. It's an incredible game. It will take you 100 hours to complete if you want to. It's just so worth checking out. No one should miss it.
Well, now that you're waxing on about it, explain a little bit why you feel it's so good.
It just is.
I'll quantify it.
Yeah, please quantify it. It just is, isn't it?
It improves upon things that were done in Oblivion. One of my biggest problems with Oblivion was like you never felt like you were. I never beat Oblivion because I made 30 characters, got them all to level 5 or 10, and got bored with the game.
Yeah.
With Skyrim, I've only made one character, and he's level 45, and I am kicking so much ass with him. I'm having way too much fun running around the countryside, killing the occasional bear. Then all of a sudden, what the fuck, dragon? And having a nice fun dragon fight, and I
mean, it's just such an incredibly polished RPG. The quests you do are all great. Just the feeling of exploring the world and how realistic it is just amazing. It's like being dumped in a world and just being told to explore it and see what you find.
Because, I mean, I have friends who do not play RPGs who are loving the hell out of this game, and I do want to play it, but I'm like, wow, what's the appeal that it's even getting non-RPG gamers into it?
It's the environments are very varied. It's generally like a winter environment, but you see a lot of green as well as a lot of mountains. The dungeons are very varied as well. You'll come across like ancient dwarven ruins as well as like ancient burial tombs, and you'll fight like undead or dwarven automatons, along with your bandits and your spirits and all that normal RPG stuff. The mechanic of the dragon shouts, is an interesting sort of mechanic too, because it's essentially a spell. I mean, let's call for it as a spell, but you still learn the spells by killing the dragons and essentially learning their language.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting, man. I do want to get it. I'm looking at the review scores now. This game could very easily be, and it will not surprise me at all, if this game alone picks up Game of the Year accolades from everybody.
It probably will. I would imagine the Game of the Year is going to be between Skyrim, Arkham City, Skyward Sword may get mentioned, but Portal maybe.
Well, I mean, just looking at the number of review sites that have given Skyrim a perfect score.
Yeah, what's the lowest on that list? Probably 9.25.
The lowest on this list is a 9 out of 10 from Edge.
Yeah.
That is the absolute lowest.
Oh, how terrible. A 9. 9.25 as your lowest? That's...
Yeah. 9 is the absolute lowest, and it's also notable for the fact that Famitsu gave this game a perfect score, and it is the first.
Wait.
What?
I'll say, wait a minute. Famitsu gave it a perfect score. That's the first Western RPG.
It is the first Western video game period to get a perfect score.
Well, there you go.
That's interesting in and of itself.
So, I do want this game, and I'm sure that once I get it, I too will fall victim to the game's beautiful. Because I've seen trailers for it. It looks so fucking shiny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is very shiny.
So, excellent, excellent, excellent.
I also want to very briefly mention Dragon Age 2 was also a very good game. It came out in March of this year as well.
Okay. I have the first Dragon Age game, which I'm going to be cracking open very soon. So, I will definitely be getting to that. All right. Anyone else want to throw out a couple of others just very briefly before we start winding down here?
All those fantastic Kinect games, obviously.
I guess not. All right.
Yeah, did Peter Molyneux have anything this year that was ruined? Did Fable 3 come out this year?
No, Fable 3 was last year, I checked.
Was it?
Fable 3 was last year.
That is a terrible game.
Fable 3 came out on Windows PC. That was about it.
Yeah, that doesn't really count.
Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so as we start to wind down, there are obviously, since this year is about to wrap up, there are games that are worth mentioning. We're looking forward to in 2012. There are already some on the horizon that I'm going to definitely want to pick up. First and foremost, BioShock Infinite.
Yes.
I have thoroughly enjoyed the first two BioShock games immensely, and BioShock has probably changed my opinion a bit on first-person shooters, because I used to just dislike first-person shooters because of, like, okay, what's the appeal in just blowing shit up and, mindlessly?
The appeal is blowing shit up.
Well, I like a bit more substance in a video game than that, Joshy.
Okay.
Blowing up a lot of shit? I mean, come on.
Hell
Work with
yeah.
this a little bit here.
BioShock is one of the only few first-person shooters I've played that has managed to tell an outstanding story whilst doing it. So, I'm really looking forward to BioShock Infinite. There is also Silent Hill Downpour, which I'm looking forward to, the next major entry in the Silent Hill series.
Is that series still doing alright? Because I dropped off on that a long time ago.
It's still actually doing very, very nicely.
Okay. We obviously can't forget Mass Effect 3.
Yep. That game also is looking forward to that. And I have some trepidation about this game. I do want it, but I'm slightly hesitant to do so. Final Fantasy 13-2.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention too. Like, I'm cautiously optimistic about this as well. So, because it sounds like they learned their lesson from 13, and
I hope so. I really hope so.
From what we've read and seen, it looks like they did learn their lesson. So,
well, that remains to be seen. But after playing Final Fantasy 13, it was just like, oh, I am disappointed. Oh man, the Final Fantasy 13. I had so much hope for that game, being the first major one in the series on the PS3, and it just
I'm very impressed that you got all the way through it.
I had to. I had to get all the way through it. The story was just interesting enough.
Sure.
Just interesting enough.
Sure, that's your excuse.
Yes, that is my excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
The only reason I played that game was for the combat.
But
the ones I'm keeping an eye out for personally. Okay, technically this gets released at the end of 2011. But it's like released 10 days before the end of the year. So I'm keeping an eye out on the Star Wars MMO.
What?
There are so many questions about that.
Yeah, that's why I'm keeping an eye out on it. Because I've tried the beta. It looks promising. But there's a couple questions that are really big they make me think this game's either going to be very bad or very good. But either way, it's going to play the shit ton because of Star Wars.
Yeah, it'll get lots and lots of attention, but nobody's really sure how awesome it actually will be or will not be yet.
Yeah, I'm also keeping an eye out. This has just been announced, so no one is really sure. Borderlands 2. Diablo 3. Dragon Quest 10.
Because that's not a series that should die, just based on the numbers.
Yeah.
But isn't 10 an MMO?
Hold that thought.
MMO.
Hold that thought. Square is covering their ass with this one. After the wonderful, wonderful failure that was Final Fantasy XIV, Square Enix has decided, well, let's take Dragon Quest X and turn that into an MMO. Now here's the thing. This is what I mean by Square's covering its own ass. Square is still going to make the single player Dragon Quest X, Dragon Quest series that we all know and love and hate. They're still going to do that, but they're also going to create separately a massive MMO component as well, because apparently Square's idea of having a Wii-only MMO will... what can possibly go wrong? I don't see any problem with making an MMO that is Wii-only.
In the year that the Wii U is going to come out.
Yeah. I'm also keeping an eye on The Last Guardian. And,
I forgot that's supposed to be out next year.
Yeah, and then this is just
that game's never coming out.
It's going to be released on Valve time.
Yeah, and also I'm personally this is personally and probably not for anyone else in this panel here, but I'm keeping an eye out for the StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm expansion.
I have StarCraft 2. I need to play the first part of it first, but I'm sure I'd probably be very interested in that one as well.
Ben, I've got one for you.
Hit me.
Metal Gear Solid Rising.
Yeah, so the thing is they're supposed to have some new information about that at the VGAs. I'm not really sure how I feel about that because it means I'm kind of looking forward to the VGAs, and I really kind of hate myself for that a little bit.
We're also forgetting the most important game of next year, Halo 4.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Some people also might be interested. The Kingdom Hearts game for the 3DS is supposed to land next year. But I think honestly,
Hearts series is so jump the shark.
I feel like at this point, people are more just interested in that game landing so they can find out whatever information is going to be revealed about the game that'll follow it. So not really an auspicious start for a title if your big reason for existing is so people can find out about the thing after you. But honestly, I'm more just excited for that game because it means maybe they'll start working on Final Fantasy Versus 13.
One day.
I haven't finished that. One day, supposedly.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I always go through this. I say, there's nothing I'm really interested in, and then things come out that I'm like, oh yeah, of course I have to pick that up. So, I don't know. We'll see. Prototype 2 comes out next year. I really liked the first one, but it definitely had some rough patches, so if they're able to fix some things with the combat, that'd be something worth picking up. Other than that, not really much as I'm looking through this list. Really
Torchlight
interests me.
2.
Huh?
Torchlight 2 as well is supposed to be coming out next year.
And Diablo 3.
Yeah. So there's as I'm looking at the list right now, there's like a dozen games that I either will buy or at least have some sort of vested interest in.
So there's definitely some good things out on the horizon. So there we go. That is pretty much going to put a bow on the year, essentially, for downloadable content. For next year, for the second season, there are definitely some episodes to look forward to. I know that, like we did this year, there will definitely be a slew of anniversary episodes, because there are some major franchises hitting milestone years next year. I haven't decided for sure what I'm going to devote the episodes to, but I just know that for next year, some of the big milestones, the Metal Gear series turns 25.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat turns 20. Street Fighter turns 25. Kirby turns 20. I know this is going to be a definite. Final Fantasy hits 25.
And unlike their 20th anniversary, they might actually do something good.
Mega Man hits 25 as well.
Yes, they do. Mega Man also gets to the 25 mark. Phantasy Star also hits 25. But, like I said, I think the only one that I know that I'm definitely doing for sure is Final Fantasy. The others, I'll probably decide at some point during our break. Also, I'm going to institute for next season a short segment that we're going to do for each episode. Basically, it's going to be cool moments in video games, which basically whoever is on the panel for that episode will discuss, just briefly, just a few minutes, just a particular thing that happened in a video game that made that game stand out, or what made that game that much more memorable. Things that are just so out of left field that you can't help but for them to stick in your mind. So that's something that we'll also be doing for next year. And of course, our usual discussion of topics related to the game industry as well. So,
cool.
Yeah, all things definitely to look forward to next year. I don't know if I'm going to PAX next year, but we'll see how that breaks down. So a big thank you to not just the three of you, but to all of the panelists that have been on downloadable content this year. We've had a lot of them. Certainly a lot of people have run through here this first year.
And a lot of them have been Ron.
Yes, Ron is the big winner, appearing on after what will be 18 out of 24 episodes, so thank you very much, Ron.
Yeah, not a problem.
Again, he needs his cubicle at the corner office, so... But yes, I mean, I won't go through listing every single frickin' panelist that has been on, because there's been a lot. But a massive thank you to all of you, and I hope that we will see a lot of you, and also hopefully some new faces next year. So, and lastly, a big thank you to any and all of my listeners. I do not know how many of you are there, because iTunes doesn't tell me. iTunes does not keep track of how many people listen or subscribe or download each episode.
Jerks.
So even if I have just one listener out there, thank you! But according to the Facebook page, there's something like 42 likes. So I'm going to assume that I have at least that many listeners.
It's got to account for something.
Yeah, it does, but that's that. So again, if you want to leave any comments, questions, rants, raves, you can go on to Downloadable Content at Facebook, facebook.com/downloadable content, or you can follow us on Twitter at DL Content. As always, all the episodes are found on iTunes for free. Free is good. We like free.
Free.
I know. So, enjoy your holidays. Enjoy the break. We will be back toward mid to late January with an all-new season of downloadable content. So for Ben, Joshi, and Ron, I am Brian. Happy holidays, and thank you very much. Have a good one.